Had to change my setup because it's 102 degrees. Fuck Texas completely as a state, as a political unit, as a citizenry, as a dietary philosophy, as an obesity rate, as a educational ranking, and as a place that's uninhabitable essentially half of the year. So I had to change my entire setup because the rest of my house has window units, and I cannot exist uh, like a sweating fat pig for hours. I was trying to sleep until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, like a respectable American these days, but it wasn't allowed. So here I am. So I'm going to try to read some of my old stuff here, and these are aphorisms. Okay, so they're weird. What is time? Asked Saint Augustine. Time would ravish the mind of a Platonist, for time itself is impermanent. Plato seeks first to stand in the river, then to declare its waters still by denying the fact that they roll by. But by denying change, he is denying time, inventing eternity, which does not exist except in that which does not exist. So eternity is not a real concept. We talk about time being eternal. It's not. Time only applies to the universe. So the universe isn't eternal. It's born and it's going to die. So, but Plato's big idea, of course, if you're familiar with philosophy, is the idea of the forms, meaning behind every physical reality there is a form somewhere that is perfect, unchanging, and what we see is a pale representation of that. That's the whole point of the allegory of the cave. Allegory of the cave is meant to tell us that we do not see things as they are. This is kind of similar to the idea of the veil of Maya in Hinduism, Maya being the goddess of illusion, Brahma being the eternal one, the pantheistic interpretation of the Satyana Dharma, right? I believe. So, very similar. And St. Augustine had these ideas about time because he was trying to place God within creation and figure it out. We must view the entire field of cosmology with innate but unprejudiced suspicion. It was born in the provincial mind of an Immanuel Kant, less a villain than a bland man. It posits many things. It depends wholly upon the Western, now global language of mathematics. So, in your ancient interpretations, metaphysics is going to be what we would identify as cosmology, but it has no bearing on the modern science. It's definitely science now. Obviously, birthed out of philosophical speculation. The reason I include Kant in there is because he is, along with Laplace, one of the people who invented the nebular hypothesis about the origin of the solar system. So he's one of these first figures that has a really good idea, right? Testable idea. So mathematics, especially with the invention of calculus by Leibniz and by Newton, gave us the concept of limits, allowed us the ability to track physical processes in this manner. Um, Now, a lot of different fields like quantum mechanics will have their equations simply using complex numbers. So we're talking about algebra, which is interesting. But yeah, I mean, you needed calculus married with this hypothetical deductive method within science to posit hypotheses and test them, right? So you have Galileo and you have Newton, really are the fathers of modern science, and together with peer review, as we know it, we have our institution of science, and that's what makes it so great. It's not depending on the genius of one. It's depending on many minds together, and it's not necessarily a democracy because you're not talking about just voting on your opinions. You're talking about identifying objectivity and following that. But yeah, I guess my issue with cosmology is that it's still metaphysical in the way that it approaches things. So reality is all that is. Simply speaking, mathematics is a function of the outreach of the human mind. The Sanskrit numbers, the Euclidean geometry, and algebra are all forms with which we seek to parse and make sensible reality. So, really, what you have here, if you understand your history of mathematics, is your history of mathematics and maybe some linguistics. You'll understand that our Arabic numerals came from India, right? And they invented the zero. Insofar as it matters to us, okay? The Mayans had also invented the zero, but they were isolated from Europe and had no way to transmit that anywhere else, okay? Um, Whereas the Indians did transmit it to the Caliphate, who then transmitted it to all of their dominions, and then it came into the West via uh, Spain, right? And maybe Thomas Aquinas, okay? So, of course, algebra is algebra. If you know that, you have your Euclidean geometry, which is really the basis of a lot of our, that's really the start of mathematics and reasoning in a lot of ways. So, we cannot prove anything. Nothing is provable. Nothing sure. This is the first truth of our metaphysics. Kurt Gödel's incompleteness theorem. Okay, that any picture of the world mathematically is going to be fundamentally incomplete. Right? Is going to put a limit on cosmology's ability to have a theory of everything. Right? And this is the big push. Is uniting general relativity and quantum mechanics, and there are different ways to do this. So there's string theory, which is untestable on a lot of levels. Okay, there's another one, quantum loop gravity was the other theory that was very popular at some point, and back and forth. Time is a fourth dimension, intricately tied to the other three. Only in our perceptions do we reduce three-dimensional objects to two by our limiting stimuli. Only by repeating this process do we think of time as an overarching entity, a father time, rather than a fourth dimension without existence independent of the other three. Time, then, is a trick of the consciousness of a given subject. So, subjective entity perceives time, that's the reality of time, rather than something objective. In fact, you look at physics, okay, they can literally run equations backwards. It means nothing to the equation, right? But to us, it would be, of course, impossible to do so, right? Which is why you can't time travel. Among the Upanishads, the concept of Brahma becomes fully developed. All is one. Physical reality is mere illusion. Among all the devas, the veil of Maya is indeed powerful. If we conceive of space as infinite and consisting of a one universe, as we must, then we must come to believe that non-existence makes up the majority of the cosmos. Essentially, if the universe is an island and there's nothing beyond the cosmic horizon, like literally, then we're a grain of sand. Well, we're a grain of sand on a grain of sand, right? So the universe is a grain of sand in an infinite sea of darkness. Okay. This non-existent space, this void as proposed by Democritus and Narajuna, will eventually comprise all of the known universe. Or on the other hand, if 99% of matter manages to have mass properties that are unknown to current size, it will collapse in on itself. The big crunch will begin, followed by another big bang. Will all time then recur, blow for blow, fodder for a metaphysician? That's a possibility, but we know now because of the shape of the universe and what we know about how it began and its current properties, dark matter, dark energy, etc., there's not going to be a big crunch. So it's because of you would have to have something to counteract the dark energy, right? So the acceleration of the universe, there's nothing to do that right now. There's literally nothing to stop that, as I talked about before. So that's going to be a problem. Here we go into some nihilism. What is justice to the universe? A human concept that must go the way of the moral world order. Morality, as perceived by religions, does not exist. All that is moral in religion depends in every way upon an afterlife. No afterlife, no morals, and morals, as traditionally understood, are understood in contradictory fashion. Anybody that's looked at religion across culture understands how completely subjective religious morality is. There's been hundreds of religions on the earth. So, and they're all based on some kind of reward system. I mean, you want to get reincarnated properly, you want to get to heaven, and you want to avoid hell. So, none of that has real moral standing. If you look at ethics, every philosopher, like literally every philosopher in the Western canon, from Socrates in the early, middle, and late dialogues of Plato, all the way up to Hume and Nietzsche. Even Nietzsche had an ethics. Nobody understands that, but it's there. Original sin dies with God. With this dies the Son. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. So that's a little phrase in Aramaic you should know if you're a Christian. I'm not going to explain to you what it means. Good and evil can only be understood in the anthropological sense, and perhaps then once again respected. There exists no overarching categorical imperative, nothing hanging about the longest horizon of the cosmos. No one's keeping score, is what I'm saying there. Cosmology itself has wielded a powerful hammer against the misconceptions of a race long ago infatuated with myth. Man was grandiose, narcissistic before Copernicus and eventually Hawking reduced him to the life of a particle. The Earth is but a simple dust in the cosmic wind. Life not only seems to lose meaning, but it seems to have no meaning, leaving only nihilism in its wake. Are there not 1,000 ways in which the Earth could perish? So wherefore dogmatism and demands of peace and utopia, foolish self-preservation at the expense of the superior man and his ideals? What is love to the universe? Another chemical imbalance among its higher amino acids. What is Alexander to the biochemist? A collection of advanced amino acids. His passion for a Hellenistic world, a simple rapid firing of synapses. So even our greatest historical figures are nothing in the greater scheme of things. Like literally, the study of history is just egotism. Really, means nothing. Existence is still existence. The fundamental questions of ethics still resound. A human being must still live. Living is enough. It is a condition. It seems even an ailment requiring various cures. The ultimate cure is still more terrible than the disease, as long as one retains the will to live. So that's a reference to Schopenhauer. Among the creatures of nature, one can see an interplay of the will to live and the will to power. Predatory creatures maintain a will to power. Prey retains only a will to live. So again, if you read Nietzsche, you know why he calls it a will to power. He's counteropposing that against Schopenhauer's will to live, which he thinks is our ultimate expression of immortality and first our expression of love to one another and our mating instinct. And then if we overcome that, we're expressing our highest values in art, architecture, philosophy, religion, right? So this is going to basically explain karma. All unwholesome action sets in motion a course of events that will reciprocate. All wholesome action does the same. All actions resound outward without regard to good or evil, God or devil. Action produces a reaction. Thus, the East was the first to see man as one with the cosmos in a unique sense. Action, not punished by some deity, would instead carry intrinsic weight. The Brahmanic mind, with its negations of objective reality, would seek to quantify the void with a zero. With this zero, the void entered the so far reasonable world of mathematics. Agni, it seems, born not a heavenly ray but a torch. So you're never going to find in Greek mathematics the concept of a zero. That's like was anathema to them. A good example of this would be the legends about the Pythagorean cult, their inability to have irrational numbers, things like that. The zero would be the ultimate problem for them. It is no coincidence that the artist is the first to dare his body towards death with copious intoxicants, where he has transcended himself and he feels the world as it is. He is in harmony with energy. Long-term destruction of the body must be sacrificed for the fleeting highs of the moments. Better a death by bits of exalted hemlock than dying of hypothermia after 1,000 dreary days. This is the common death. So if you've ever wondered why they're all overdosing, I mean, there you go. When a star perishes, it does so with an explosion. The incredibly, the increasingly metallic core of the most giant of these stars lets off its gas. Out of control, the star is eradicated in an explosion. Planets near are burned to cinders. Planets far off are pelted with gamma rays in the right circumstance. Gamma ray burst is we don't really know what causes it. Might be a neutron star colliding with a black hole. Superstring theory postulates that all matter is a mere vibration of energy. That we're all music to contrast the cosmic background noise that seems only to his. So the cosmic background noise, of course, is the echo of our inflationary period in the cosmos in which the space itself expanded faster than the speed of light. Society as we know it, with laws, institutions, and the like, stands in direct opposition to the nature of things. Society is artificial. It seeks to place us in our proper orbits without reference to our gravity. Indeed, to have gravity at all is an old habit that died too easily among the great. Proto-people are always the ones that burn the brightest, the first among those to have been considered the Arya who took the walled cities of Mohenjo-daro. These came, merciless and full of energy to consume the people there. From high on horseback, terrifyingly clad Kshatriyas, full of the power of Soma, unleashed arrows upon their foes, but they too settled, only in turn to be supplanted by further invasions, like the British, who may have invented the Aryan invasion hypothesis in the first place. Proto-people have no governing authority. They are the illegitimate parents of authority. Their task is to bring forth, but for those of us in this last stage of societies, in this twilight of all things, the task may be to learn to live according to our innate energies. The barbarians are essentially the regenerators of civilization, is what I'm saying. You could replace this, very Nietzschean example with the Germans in Europe. You could replace it with the Mongols across Eurasia. So anytime you get an ossification, especially in more ancient societies, okay, ossifying. I'm trying to the Khwarezmian Shah, right? Khwarezmian Empire, ossifying. Um, you have the fractured nature of China, the Jin and the Sung, and then the Mongols come and they destroy them all and unite them and renew things. You have the Sikh destroyed Christian empires in Europe, represented in Rome, and of course the Germans come and they destroy the tyrannical Roman Empire and replace its structures with their own. So what's funny is we no longer have that that same renewing force in our societies anymore. So if you have an ossifying global civilization that seems to be killing itself with habits, there's nothing that's going to check that really, because every society in the global north has the same outlines, right? We speak different languages, we have different cultures, but we're fundamentally similar. In cosmology, there's a much bantered about theory of everything, a quest that is Platonic silliness. Pythagoras and Plato have returned without God and form and have taken up again the equation. So yeah, I mean, again, I don't think we're going to have a theory of everything in the way that people think you're going to have E equals mc squared, and that's going to explain quantum mechanics, general relativity. It's impossible, literally impossible. It's never going to happen because that's so reductionist of the entirety of physical reality. Um, because we're getting fooled by the beauty of that equation because it's a mass energy equivalence, right? Which is complicated, but it can be expressed in a non-complicated manner because it's somewhat not a complicated idea at its base. But a theory of everything has to unite quantum mechanics and that. And the problem is, what's the quantum nature of gravity? So that's the major issue. What are the large-scale implications of quantum effects? One of the things that's been talked about as a solution for the Casimir effect, which is the void energy of literally you have a void between two objects, it will exert energy on them and push them apart by a very minuscule amount. One of the things they talked about is maybe dark energy is that. Again, it's unlikely because you can take that little value and scale it up and figure out that it's not enough to account for that much. It's probably a counterintuitive property of space, right? Because when you're talking about inflationary theory, you have a core, a singularity, right? It came out of nowhere, really. And in it, you have your fundamental forces unified, and then they come apart at certain intervals. We know when, uh, mainly due to quantum chronodynamics, right? Um, you can see when strong and weak nuclear force comes apart, electromagnetism and gravity, right? When they all decouple and all of that. And through the work of Alan Guth, we do know that inflation was faster than the speed of light for a certain period. So space itself can violate the rules within space, right? So if space can expand faster than the speed of light, that doesn't necessarily violate the laws of physics, since the laws of physics are, of course, within space itself. So maybe what we're seeing with dark energy is some other effect of that expansion, which again is counterintuitive because we'd have to step outside of the universe and be able to understand it as an entity itself, right? Maybe it's just what happens, right? Because of our given initial conditions. And perhaps there probably are other cosmoses with different laws of physics that aren't going to have that issue. But yeah, just want to be like a little bit of a banter, nonsensical, all over the place collection of aphorisms about a lot of stuff. Not as much of an elitist, so some of that stuff doesn't really hold. But yeah, it's interesting speculation. It kind of got me started on my journey of not believing in a lot of nonsense. So hopefully it's enjoyable, just like my afro. It's pretty great. when you have a receding hairline and you can't really tell because it just grows over. And but yeah, this is what it looks like when I don't do anything to it.